Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we look back at the previous week in soccer and/or football, and then we tackle the things that we thought were interesting. I'm Tom Rennie of SiriusXM and TalkSport fame. Alongside me is Brian Dunny Dunseth of, just get my list here, SiriusXM, Apple TV, TNT, ESPN, ABC, LMNOP, all of that fame. How are you, Danny? All right?
Yeah, I'm great, Rennie. After all you rattled off, I realized, what the hell am I doing here? No, I'm just joking. I enjoy.
What are you doing here? Why do you do this
I love my
show?
Tuesdays, man. I love my Tuesdays with you. I love winding you up. I'm not sure how much I love being wound up, but I love our little community, man. By the way, every once in a while, I'll pop on over to the podcast platforms, the YouTubes that we're on, available wherever you're watching and or listening to. And I'll read the comments, and which is such a bad idea after Reddit a few years ago. But
people loved you on Reddit. You went over very well on Reddit.
That was a long time ago. Listen, I appreciate everyone out there in video and radio land, podcast land. I appreciate when you subscribe, when you rate, when you send us a message, when you throw us some questions. I love the interaction. Some of you got a little Dunsethery, some a little bit too much fucking Dunsethery. Sorry, Tim, but I appreciate you. So I'm glad the horse is around every once in a while. He had his hands full of work.
You did too much. Last week, he wasn't here to produce the program live. And I said to Tim, I was so sorry, but Dunny went off on one to such a degree that you might be editing this all night. And poor Tim, I think his wife's left him because of last week, because of what you did.
His poor wife never met him, never married him, and never left him, or did leave him. Well, either
his
way,
imaginary wife has left him. It's a real shame. I suppose there's some pep in your step as well. It's not one of our many topics for today's program, but the form team in European football right now, top of the form guide, if the season started 5 games ago, would be Manchester freaking United. Is that why you're so happy?
Really?
Yes.
Who are the idiots what's the stupidity in that algorithm that figured that one out?
It's the actual only algorithm that counts points on the table. It's not the XG table or the how pretty was our passing table or do we pass the eyeball test table or the sovereign wealth fund table or any of that sort of stuff. It's the how many games you've won in this period of time table, which is literally the only one that matters. Across the last 5, Liverpool are second, I think. City are third. Villa are fourth. Yada, yada, yada. Numero uno is Manchester. Red Devils. It's all gone wrong. We are Manchester United Football Club United. That's exciting.
Well, you know, it's kind of fascinating through all the shits and giggles. Sorry, Tim, because I feel like I get to do this. I've been tortured this year. Manchester United currently, after 12 matches, is 4 points behind Aston Villa. Not the visual marker that you're looking for 5th position in the Premier League, but is only 5 points behind Tottenham Hotspur. Remember, Ange Postecoglou, that can do no wrong. And Mikel Arteta, is he angry? Is he happy? Is he mad? Is he, hey, Mr. Personality? It's only 2 games behind.
We've got a dog named Win, so I've got a personality.
Yeah, we're gonna be there. We're gonna be there. So I don't know, man.
Enjoy it. Just enjoy it.
No,
Harry
no.
Maguire, man of the match in 3 games in a row. Just enjoy it.
Well, yeah, listen, maybe Erik ten Hag's not a bad guy after all. Maybe old Harry just had to work harder and find his form. And man, what's he doing to Rafael Varane now? I mean, are we going to do that one? I guess
we weren't going to, but you have previously done. What's that about? You know,
but
because when he plays, he was fucking useless. Sorry, Tim. That's probably why he's not playing. Sorry, Rio. He's sitting there all confused. I'm so confused. Why am I not playing? Because we watched you play in Copenhagen and you were an absolute disgrace. That's why your form has completely gone out the window, and you should maybe consider becoming, I don't know, a basketball player or a cobbler. Do something else.
What about Eric Dyer? Did we forget about Eric Dyer being benched down at where was the outrage for the Kangaroo Jack? By the way, looks at notes, thinks about this international window. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, 1.5 billion. Sir Dave Brailsford, he's going to run everything. Could it be Paul Mitchell, sporting director? Allegedly, he watched Mason Greenwood at Getafe last weekend. What about Dougie Freedman? I mean, everyone's talking about the job that he's done at Crystal Palace.
Who let the Duke out?
The job that he's done at Crystal Palace.
So Doogie Friedman, who is a great guy, by the way.
Yeah, I watched the what was the show, the Netflix show, When Eagles Soar or something like that,
Yes,
about
Where
Crystal
Eagles
Palace.
Dare.
There you go. Oh,
That's
see, I was
it.
close. Yeah, it's
Something like
great.
That might also be a very good film about the Nazis. I'm not sure. Either way, but Doogie Friedman, one of my best friends, is a big Crystal Palace fan, and the Doog was a prominent player during a long time there.
Captain, right?
And he was captain. He's been a club ambassador. He left, he came back, all that sort of stuff, right? And we used to do a thing at university because Who Let the Dogs Out was a big hit by the Baha Men at the time. So we used to do a thing where you would, like, at one time, you'd be able to go up to someone and say, "Who let the Doog out?" because of Doogie Friedman, and then you'd have to down your drink and then go Doog afterwards.
Oh, really? That was your drinking game?
That was one of the many drinking games that we played with the rugby team. Yeah, it was good.
Okay.
Let's move on to some of the things I did want to talk about today.
Who let the Doog out?
Who? Quick. Just down this water.
Cheers.
No, I'm actually too old. I'm not doing that. I wanted to ask you about Chelsea, not necessarily the Man City angle of things. The game on Sunday was great. Super game, super fun, toing and froing, mistakes all around. Ruben Dias giving a penalty away at the end was just so amateur. It was hilarious. You don't expect that from a defender of his caliber. The whole Cole Palmer thing. I mean, people going a bit hot and heavy on Cole Palmer, can I say. He's a good player, right? Looks a good player. Could be a better player as the years go on, but City let him go because he'd have no business in their team. He had a really good half an hour against them, a couple of great dribbles, the balls of steel penalty, absolutely. But can we not English press this?
Well, he got called in the English national team.
Yeah, but he's been brought in as player number 24 for a game against Malta. I mean, it's great. It's great. I hope he becomes great. But...
So he's James Maddison, basicly.
Yeah. He's coming to cover Madison for a game that don't matter. That's fine. I'm pleased for him. Yeah. But all this why didn't City put in a buyback clause for Cole Palmer? He looks amazing. They didn't do it because they didn't want him. That's why.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen. The reality is that it was gonna take something really special for him to break through at Man City. And we're talking about the best team in the world. And there's nothing wrong with Cole Palmer moving to Chelsea because think about it. Financially, they cash in. All that money goes straight into financial fair play. That gives them the equity that they need behind the scenes. I know insert joke here about ownership, blah, blah, blah. But I understand why they sold him. Now, at the end of the day, how much are they going to regret that? They won't. No. They won't regret it at all because they're Man fucking City. Sorry, Tim. I just had to get that in there. They can buy whoever they want. They don't have to. God, it makes me so happy when I make it work.
That's why you do this podcast. Why do I keep doing this podcast?
I feel like I can torture somebody.
Broadcast arm in your arsenal where you're allowed to swear fucking liberally. Sorry, Tim.
See, now I got you going. So listen, I think he makes Chelsea better. I think he's a really good option for them, and I think we're continuing to see him do something special. By the way, the whole thing about don't celebrate. Where's I saw someone saying, and Raheem Sterling chose to celebrate. And I was like, do you fucking idiots not remember that he was at Liverpool before he was at Man City? Sorry, Tim. I'm going to stop. That was my last one. I don't think that's true. But I mean, what are we worried about here?
Celebrate.
No fun, please. Celebrate. Come on. I get if you're a one-man club and it's a muted celebration. But this whole thing, let's stop being the no fun police. They're scoring goals at the highest level that you can possibly play outside of being at a World Cup. Let them enjoy it. To your point about the game, I said this on SiriusXM, FC on Counterattack with Miola. I think two versions of Chelsea, right? The win against Tottenham was we have to win this game because of the circumstances. This is a different one. I think it is a watermarker. I think what Pochettino has preached to all of us on the outside looking in or from the inside looking out, from Pochettino's perspective, is I need time. I need time. He's at Chelsea. You don't get that much time, although we don't really understand the parameters of what is or is not success outside of a top four finish and qualifying for Champions League. So the reestablishment of whatever Chelsea Football Club is choosing to do, led by Pochettino on the pitch, we're seeing incremental growth, I think, is the fairest way to judge this. Now, the watermarker for me is because it's the best team in the world. It's Man City. So Are there negatives? Of course, you gave up 4 goals. It's still Man City. Are there positives? Of course, you scored 4 effing goals. See, I held it right there.
Well done.
So yeah, listen, I think wherever you fall in line, I think at a bare minimum, you acknowledge that Pochettino now has a water marker. And the water marker for this group of players is to, at a bare minimum, match some of the variables in his, however he interprets his game model, coaches his game model. Now there's some non-negotiables, and the non-negotiables are, at a bare minimum, I expect you to match that type of performance against Man City.
Does this mean we can go back to having some fun with Chelsea when they lose?
Hope
Because
so.
when they were losing games, like when Man United lose a game, like against Copenhagen, I feel like we can do a good 24 hours in the football chat ecosystem of hilarious
100%.
banter.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a generational thing because 90s kids are now in their 30s. We run the media now, guys, and we want our revenge on Manchester United.
Yes.
Some of that is probably true. For me, it certainly is. But with Chelsea, it's a kind of 10 years later, so maybe we're 10 years away from everyone in their 30s and early 40s from sticking the boot in on Chelsea as much, I don't know. But I feel like, Dunny, it got so sad.
Yeah.
Like, things just got so sad at the end with Frank Lampard. It was all just so meek and miserable. It was like having to continually deal with someone at the office who you knew their wife was sleeping with the boss. But every day, you just had to keep on like, oh, hello, Gerald. I'm sure.
Somebody.
I'm sure, yeah, Gerald. I know. Oh, Jean's a lovely woman. I'm sure she'll take you back, and you know she's getting into like Billy's Volvo home on the night out, and he's getting in her Volvo later. Am I right? So Volvo's a car. Just
I'm
in
gonna
case.
put my bike in your trunk.
Yes, need somewhere to park my bike. Bend over. It's a whole. It's sort of a pathetic cuckolded club at some point for some period of time, and I think we all sort of felt almost sorry for them because we knew they were owned by a lunatic and a secondary lunatic that didn't know what they were doing. They were rich but incompetent in this business and all that sort of stuff, right? And side note, let's hope Pochettino just gets them to do nothing in January so he can just work with this massive group of players and try and do something. But we'll park that for later when they definitely don't do that and it's super funny again. But it does sort of feel that way, Dunny, a little bit, doesn't it? That we've kind of let them off the hook a bit. Whereas now, when they lose next week, when the proper football comes back, and we're not trying to pretend England-Malta matters, we can have some serious fun with it, which would be good for us, #content.
Yeah, listen, you're talking to a guy that worked with Andrew Williams, the producer, former producer at SiriusXM FC, who is, talk about an absolute lunatic of a Chelsea homer. I mean, I've in his Lululemon stretchy pants, either working out or riding the bike with his shirt off, eating a ham sandwich, thinking that was going to be
in his stretch pants with his shirt off on a bicycle, eating a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
At the same time, simultaneously.
Yes.
This is...
when you feel like you're doing something that affects your team either positively or negatively, like for example, when you used to go to the Bowl of Disappointment and West Ham would lose, you would be like, there's a part of you would be like, it's my fault. I got to
wear this jumper again. Yeah. Last time I wear these socks. Yeah,
exactly. So that Andrew Williams had to ramp up what his specific things were to make sure that Chelsea won. But it got to the point where Tony Meola and A-Dub and I were like bantering back and forth. It just became kind of non-existent. And again, you think about from Boli and Igbali and the amount of money and, oh my God, they're doing this incredible thing where they're meeting with Joan Laporta and they're having dinner in Barcelona and then they're buying all this and they're doing that. And oh my God, we have an owner that's spending money. And it just goes to show you that you have to spend as much as we talk about the PSGs or we talk about the Man Cities or even we talk about Newcastles now, there's still there has to be a prudent plan in place. If you're going to spend the money, at least spend the money on the right players.
Well, there's only so many great players as well, isn't there? There's only so many Kevin De Bruyne's. There's only so many Lionel Messi's or whatever.
Jeremy Doku. I mean, how do you find a Jeremy Doku that becomes literally a starter over Jack Grealish?
Well, you don't buy Cole Palmer, I suppose.
Well, or you flush out Cole Palmer and you bring in Doku. So, I mean, look at Manchester United. And again, you're potentially looking at another squad rebuild with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, $1.5 billion. So I think it is fascinating. Again, credit where credit's due short term, but I pull up the schedule. I show you guys all this all the time. I do kind of this return to play schedule. Which games are coming up? Chelsea at Newcastle, home against Brighton, at
Yeesh.
Manchester United, at
Oof.
Everton, home against Sheffield, home against Newcastle, at Wolves, home against Palace, at Luton. That will get them into January for that first break.
Yeah.
Context, both them and Spurs, no Champions League football, no Europa League football, no Conference League football. So potentially 2-3 games less than everybody else that are in, quote unquote, the top 6. So a chance. But again, now we get to be judgmental because it's now back-to-back performances where nobody I don't know about the Tottenham game, but nobody expected anything out of Man City.
We thought Tottenham were going to win. Tottenham were the favourites.
First 20
City
minutes.
Were the favourites.
Until the stupidity. Yeah.
Until the stupidity. And it's worth noting, too, before we move on, that the top 8 are going to be in European football next year. The top 5 will be in the stupid Swiss Champions League. There'll be 2 Europa Leagues, 1 Conference League as well. So Chelsea are likely to be back in European football next season. So it is a big chance this season. 2 other quick questions on this game, more broadly, Danny. One thing I loved about it was the conditions. I just feel in my gut, I don't have the evidence to prove this, but I feel in my gut that football is just better in the torrential, disgusting rain. It's just better. It's such a wonderful equalizer to, this team are built by a baron of oil or an oligarch or a sovereign wealth fund or a bored nephew of a crown prince who just wants to spend as much money as possible or whatever, right? The stupid people that own clubs now. But the great equalizer, and this is slightly different because it's not like Luton against Man City, but in that driving torrential rain, even Ruben Dias, one of the top 5 or 6 centre-halves in the business, can make one of the dumbest challenges you're ever going to see from a defender because of the conditions and the fatigue and all the elements that come together. Is football better when it's pissing down?
It's a lot more fun. I mean, by the way, every time we went over to England with either the under 20s or the under 23s, or we would go over the I don't know how to explain it. I always wore long sleeves. I was a long sleeve guy. If there was an option for me to have long sleeves, I was always playing like this. Like I always had my hands in my shirt like that. And I just felt like, okay, this is it. Like game on, like get stuck in, you wear your studs, switch out your boots, like it just felt like you could tackle and slide an extra 5 feet. You had to be super mindful of where you're closing down space. You could dig those heels in, don't slip, maybe turn a little bit quicker. If they're already facing you up, then you got to back off. You can't go super touch tight. The way you could kind of like smack a ball, you change the way you hit a ball based on if it's raining or not, the ball skipping around. Like if you're going to hit a long ball in a diagonal, you get under it and kind of create the backspin so the ball can skip a little bit and give you a chance for your outside winger to come in. The curling balls into space outside of the foot. Like, I don't know. And maybe this is just us being old. I know I'm older than you, but it really does, for as amazing as the Premier League is and modern day football is, and tiki-taka, move the ball around, keep it on the deck, ping the ball around, all that stuff. I don't know, man. There's something. It's the smell of the grass, the smell of the rain. There's something super iconic for me thinking about that, and just knowing that you're all and listen, you can't really do it now because of VAR, but you were always on the edge of picking up a card. You were always on the edge of that tackle that you might have got ball, but you fucking crunched someone. Sorry, Tim. And I don't know, man. I agree with you.
It's just a bit more fun. I think it's more fun to watch because it adds a little bit of chaos to an otherwise a game that can be a little bit staid at times, certainly with the inequality we have at the very top level. But also playing. And I used to when I used to turn up for Sunday League and it was absolutely bucketing down. I just thought this is going to be such a fun day. It's going to, because I'm a centre half, so it's going to be fun. I'm going to get to kick multiple people. I'm going to get to do my favourite thing ever, which is slide tackles.
Yeah.
We're going to get a penalty, and I took the penalties, so I'm going to get at least one penalty today. So I might score. Corners are going to be amazingly random and fun. Just you knew you were in for a fun day. So I loved it. I enjoyed that element, and it kind of made two of the most expensively assembled clubs in the world look like the Dog and Duck 11 against the Spud-you-like Irregulars, and I very much enjoyed that. I want to be on to this Newcastle
Oddly
story,
specific.
Danny. Yes, well, they're two very funny names that I use regularly for that sort of thing. I want to talk to you about this Kieran Trippier thing. So Kieran Trippier, post-game, Newcastle decimated by injuries against Bournemouth. They had to play Lewis Miley in midfield, who played very well, by the way, 17 years of age. He won an award this week for like North East Young Footballer of the Year or something like that. And he went to the award ceremony, and it was just like looking at someone's like little brother who went on stage by accident, or like someone sent their son up to do the karaoke, singing a song that they'd never actually heard before on a holiday camp. Right? It was bizarre. He's about 6'4", so, it's not going to go wild, but he looks incredibly young. He played very well. Anyway, they lost Newcastle 2-0 against Bournemouth, and, it was such bare bones. I'm not going to feel sorry for the kingdom of Newcastle United here, but they were set up to lose, right?
It was tough, yeah.
It was very tough. Anyway, post-game, a fan said something either untoward or whatever that got the hackles up of Kieran Trippier, the captain. Trippier went over and was kind of videoed by a fan on their phone saying, how many injuries have we got? How many injuries have we got? And whatnot. Reacting in the heat of the moment, saying that what could we do? Yada, yada, yada. We gave our best. Anyway, that was a fan called Thomas Willoughby, who has been posting on the Newcastle United Supporters Club Facebook page this week. And I wanted to read you a little bit of what he said and get your view on the story. Willoughby said, quote, I won't do the accent. Maybe I will. It was me. No, I can't do it. Got to get into the Geordie. Beer can sandwich. It was me. I travelled all day and was very frustrated about the performance. I regret having a go at them because I know what all these players have done for club. No, I've gone a bit Midlands. He says, everyone's done stupid things. I hold my hands up and admit I shouldn't have had a go at them. But it was heat of the moment. One guy responded, mate, you held your hands up, but you crossed the line. Drink fizzy pop in future. Which I enjoyed. So look, Trippier apologised, Thomas Willoughby apologised, nothing so untoward happened that it's an Eric Cantona jumps into the crowd at Selhurst Park kind of thing. But I wonder what you thought of it, Dunny, because I'm sort of for, to a degree, fans and players just having a conversation like normal people and, not having that barrier between the players and supporters. We live in mansions and you don't. Pay me to watch me. I want to guard against that. But I also think the players don't owe me anything other than their best effort. They don't owe me a win. They don't owe me skill. They just owe me their best efforts to win the game. And I think Newcastle did give their best effort. They just had two 17-year-olds in the team, 10 players missing. And Bournemouth are not like the Spud You Like Irregulars. They're a proper team, even though they're managed by a rollneck guy. What did you make to it, the altercation and the aftermath?
I knew you'd get your shot in. First off, please tell me that you needed subtitles or closed caption like I did to understand exactly what Kieran Trippier said. Because when he walked over, he started like yelling at him, and I was like, what is he, is that Welsh? Like, what is he saying? I don't understand what he's saying. And then someone put the closed caption on. I was like, oh, well, yeah, okay. I get what he's saying, but like, why isn't he pronouncing this correctly? So, okay, we do this thing, and it's the same in social media. Fans, people on Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it nowadays.
I want to call it Twitter.
Yeah, well, just call it Twitter because it's twitter.com. There's a, I don't want to say the lack of intimacy, but there's a lack of reality because you feel as though that you can say whatever you want. And to an extent, I'm just as guilty of this because when I watch my favorite teams, I'm frustrated, right?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Like, they're not people, they're athletes.
That's the fan experience. You're entitled to that, aren't you?
100%. Oh, dude, listen, I got murdered all the time during my career. Like, I literally had someone write.
He's not a vampire.
I'm still here. Yeah, still. I would. There was something called Big Soccer, and Big Soccer was like pre-Twitter. It was pre-Reddit. It was like the soccer chat board in the United States before kind of social took off. And I remember one time somebody in the locker room goes, dude, did you see what they wrote about you on Big Soccer? And I was like, I don't read that stuff. What are you talking about? He's like, and I had a bad game. They're like, why would you ever play him again? Just refer to him now as Brian, stick a fork in me. I'm done, Seth. And I was like, somewhat creative, but that guy. Sorry, Tim. And so, yeah, I mean, like I can vividly remember like going over for a throw in. And that's why I didn't like being an outside back, because you would just get it. Like, it's not just like you suck, but it's everything about your mom, your sister. I mean, some of the creativity was amazing. Like they did research. They knew my sister's name. They knew my mom's name.
Oh,
like,
dear.
People could get after you. There was some ruthlessness.
They wouldn't read out your number plate to you, would they? That's a bit concerning.
It was good banter, and it was
Brian Dunseth from 17 Cherry Tree Lane, who goes to get his paper at 9:05 on Tuesday morning.
Yikes.
Yikes.
One time I'll have to tell you about the girl I met in Australia that somehow found my mailing address and sent me a picture about a year later after.
Let's clear that with legal, and if we can do it, we'll do it next week.
It was the Olympics. It was a whole different time and place. But fans feel as though they can voice their frustration and forget at certain times that players are human beings too, and that you wouldn't say things to people's faces on the streets that you say on social media, that you say from a distance, knowing that there's a barrier and a security guard. So, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, the challenge, take away the fan experience, right? The challenge for Eddie Howe, Newcastle United sports department, their physiology department, their medical department, their nutrition department, their recuperation, rest, recovery programming, the amount of games that they're in. I mean, 3 weeks ago, we were saluting Eddie Howe in Newcastle for the team that they put on the field at Old Trafford to beat Manchester United. And now we're saying, well, they've got a bunch of injuries. This is going to be the challenge. They probably overpunched their weight last year. They fast forwarded the project. They're now competing in Champions League and probably the group of death, however you want to verbalize it. They're doing their best. I mean, they're competing. They're just not punishing, and not the results aren't there, but they've been in every game. They're doing well in EFL Cup. They're going to try to make their run in FA Cup. Remember, they've beaten Manchester City and Man United in the Carabao Cup. And now they're feeling the effects of having a roster that obviously isn't as strong and as deep as they want as they continue to build whatever this looks like. But also, it's a maiden voyage for a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys haven't had to deal with the amount of travel, haven't had to deal. Listen, Champions League football is incredible, but there's also like an understanding of your body and how you're going to manage yourself. And I think this is a new project for everyone to be involved. So I get Trippier's perspective. I understand the depths in which these injuries are absolutely suffocating Eddie Howe's ability to put a team on the field. But guess what? If you want to be a massive club, if you want to be this top 4, top 6 club year after year, these are the challenges that you're going to have to deal with. And they're not going to be like Leicester City, right? It's a different financial backing. It's a different perspective. They could potentially have the same success. Who knows if they're going to win a Premier League title? They're trying to build to win a Premier League title, but now you're competing on the same playing field that some of these other teams are competing on, and it's your first year. It's going to be difficult, and this is the problem. So, yeah, fine line, though, for Trippier. Got to be really careful when you start popping back at the fans, because he's an iconic presence, and he's done a good job being one of the first guys in the door to be a part of this. But at the same time, it's a very small window of loyalty when it comes to football.
I mean, the only element that I would add for me is that there is a line, I think, that is different in footballing cultures and countries between fans and players. And I do think sometimes in the last 20 years or so, the fact that all the players are now like millionaires and above, the most average Premier League player you could imagine is a millionaire who doesn't pay their mortgage anymore. And that certainly wasn't even the case in the mid-90s, let alone, it's a very short space of time. So I think there's been a bit of a gap, and some clubs do a good job trying to bring that sort of together. Sometimes it's a bit fake on social media, sometimes some great community projects and that sort of thing. I do like the fact that Trippier went over and spoke to the fan. I don't think he went too far. I don't think he disrespected the supporters that were there. And I thought that element was quite good. But I also really don't like what happens in France, for example, where the ultras in France are so entitled. They are so dominant. They are so overrepresented at clubs that sometimes in France at this moment in time where they're having this massive, horrible right-wing takeover of football club crowds and ultras. It's a horrible place to go and watch football right now, France, and it's getting worse and worse, and there's no sign they're going to start treating hooliganism in France in the same way the UK government did in the 80s and 90s to try and stamp out this horror you were seeing in stands all the time and outside stadiums. They don't seem to have any ability to stop it or interest in stopping it, from what I've been able to read and gather so far. You might disagree with that. Feel free to at me. I'd love to learn more about it, but from what I've been able to gather at the moment, it's running amok at the moment out in France. And you get things like an ultra in the stadium will be so entitled, they'll go and take a microphone and start talking directly to players or to managers. And we saw what happened, at Napoli recently. What was the funny one about Spalletti in his first spell? They took his tyres and were like,
you should be wheel.
They took his steering wheel, that was it.
Yeah.
And were like, you shouldn't be our manager. And then when he left, having won on the title, they give him the steering wheel back. And it's good funny banter. No, you broke into a man's car because you didn't feel like his job was being done to your standards, and you basically stole the steering wheel from his car. Like, you're a prick. It's utterly unacceptable
behavior. What they do to Rudy Garcia now that he got sacked?
Well, I think it's probably for the best. He's getting
Materazzi coming back. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. Well,
Watford.
Eventually, at some point, every former Watford manager is going to take over your club because everyone's been in charge of Watford for 5 minutes. But, just that sort of thing, Danny. I want to make sure that I encourage discussion. I think that element is great. But I think what happens sometimes in these other countries is I think it's utterly unacceptable. The players who play, it's their job in the end. And all they owe us, I think, as a supporter, is 100% effort. They don't owe us anything else. And if they miss a chance, they fall over at the vital moment. If Mikel Antonio misses an open goal to make it 3-1 against Brentford, he doesn't owe me that goal. I can vent about it. I think you're allowed to vent. I think that's why you go to these things. I don't think anything you say in the first half an hour from the whistle to half an hour to control your emotion should count for much. But after that, level heads and all that should prevail. Anyway, I want to move on, Dunny, to ask you a little bit about dads. I don't know if you saw this, but Aaron Ramsdale's dad is doing what's known in the industry as doing a Claudio. So Aaron Ramsdale is...
I just got that. Oh, man. Well done.
Hope you enjoyed it. Doing a Claudio. So basically, his dad keeps on speaking about his son being dropped. And to be fair, what Arteta has done and the way he has handled Ramsdale being dropped as Arsenal number one, it's bad. He has handled it badly. The way he described having 2 number one goalkeepers was bollocks. And all of it is, he should have just said, David Raya's my number one. It's my job to choose the number one goalkeeper. The end. Instead, he did this whole soft soap about 2 number ones and the whole substitution story, whatever. Anyway, Aaron Ramsdale's dad has been on the Highbury Squad podcast. Firstly, they pay me 80 grand a week. Stop going on podcasts, please, Dad. Quote, you just have to look at it personally. And I'm probably saying too much. Yes, you are. Aaron is going to be the cup goalkeeper and Raya's the main man, unless something happens like an injury or sending off. And Aaron's got to live with that, and he's living with that even though he's not been told it by anybody, which I think is a really valid point, but again, shouldn't come from Dad. Squads evolve all the time. Nobody's going to be there forever. Raya has not pulled up any trees so far, and let's say he's not going to, even though the way it's been done in my eyes has been wrong. Aaron's lost that smile, and it's difficult to see him there. Now, some very valid points in there, I think the way it's been handled is very, very bad from Mikel Arteta, who didn't have the cojones to tell Ramsdale that he was number 2 and Raya's number 1. However, pipe down, Dad. What do you do here?
Well, it's interesting, man. Because we're doing this thing with this narrative thing over in England where everyone was up in arms about Harry Maguire for a long, long time, right? And no one was really talking about Eric Dyer. And then people were kind of referencing different players and who's in, who's out. And right now, how could Gareth Southgate ignore Raheem Sterling and not bring him into the mix? And oh my God, Jadon Sancho in that situation. This one. And I saw, and I've only seen the clip. I haven't seen the whole thing with Ian Wright and Aaron Ramsdale, where he said that he has trouble focusing during a match and that he's actually got to interact with fans to like refocus. And I don't know if that is a serious medical diagnosis that we're unaware of, but that is certainly an incredible amount of information that he chose to arm a lot of people with to use against him. But I also think we're in a different time and a different place. because I think the mental health conversation is a much easier conversation to have right now. So I think we got to separate these things in a few different categories. Number one, I think we have to separate the competition conversation. And the competition between Ramsdale and David Raya might have already been tilted in David Raya's favor based on the fact that they went out and they exercised their ability to go bring him in to, quote unquote, compete with Aaron Ramsdale. But anytime you bring a guy in while ushering Matt Turner out the door, it led us to believe immediately, well, what is happening right here? Aaron Ramsdale is undisputed number one. Why would you go get, if you literally rode him in some of his performances really, really far into what was a serious title push until the last 5-6 games of the season. So to bring Raya in, different profile of goalkeeper, but comparable in a lot of ways. So then the man management of Arteta publicly, I think he got it wrong. I understand what he's trying to do. I still think that every player wants to be told face up, hey, what's happening here? What's the plan? Hey, you're going to start the season as the number 2, and let him decide if he wants to stay or if he wants to go. But then you're creating the atmosphere of the competitiveness for him to work himself back in. And it's different because it's a 1-for-1 position. It's not like any other position on the field. His dad, listen, he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
he's making a boatload of money. His dad is his dad, and it's always going to be his champion, his protector, his best friend, his advocate, all of those things. But it's his dad, and he's a grown-ass man, and it's not going to be perceived well. It's not going to be absorbed well, and it's only going to make his son's life, it's only going to create more havoc. It's unnecessary havoc and noise when it should be just, again, about competition and performance. And then finally, for Aaron Ramsdale to come out and say what he said, I told you at the All-Star game, I specifically watched him during the skills challenge. He seems like an incredible person. He seems like so much fun to be around. His personality was off the charts. Just watching him on the side, watching the goalie wars, like going nuts and all that stuff, to even going up to talk trash to Kai Havertz after Havertz had the shocker on the service volley and finishing. He just seemed like an incredible guy, like the type of psycho goalkeeper that everybody knows. And I mean that with the most love possible. Like, they're all nut jobs, and he was one of those nut jobs that seemed like this big cuddly bear. But you could see Ian Wright, you could see his face, you could see his eyes when Ramsdale was giving this information out. And it was almost like he wished the cameras weren't rolling, that he could yell pause, stop, cut. Aaron, you don't want to, no, bro, you don't want to be saying this. It was all like you could almost see in that mind, like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, you can see his eyes kind of like open up a little bit wider, because this is now, and I've already seen the clips. I've literally seen people try to use Ramsdale looking at his left post, the sightline where he is in goal, and beaten to the far post on a ball that goes on the deck. And people saying, oh, look right here. He's looking at the fans. He's trying to reset his psyche. Like, no, he's getting his position. It's the technique of the position to know where he is as a reference point near post. Like, so now he's unintentionally, while trying to explain who he is as a human being, he's now armed people with ammunition to create even more havoc on top of his dad creating havoc around him. So the only way that this ends, it ends with him leaving. He's now listen, he is I think a great goalkeeper. I don't know if he's an elite goalkeeper when we talk about the best of the best in the Premier League, but he is certainly a Premier League goalkeeper. He is a great goalkeeper. He's an England international. He's might not be the number 1, but he's in the group when he's playing. So there's plenty of teams in the Premier League that could use his services. I think he's going to be just fine. This will be a period that'll be really uncomfortable. I could see him and his representatives and his family saying January is the time you got to get out. I could see him keeping his head down and saying, no, I want to fight for my position, because there's been a couple of opportunities where Raya hasn't covered himself in the most light and the most glory. But it's going to have to take something special for Arteta to believe that Ramsdale can be his number 1 with the profile that he has, considering that he's already gone on the market and tried to upgrade from him.
I mean, it's all just so unnecessary, and it's been badly handled. And I hope he does get out in January, because it's clear if the manager has not gone up to him to tell him the facts of the case, then he doesn't have enough respect for him. And at that point, I would just say, thanks a lot. I don't need to be here. There's 17 other clubs in the league that would want me. There's clubs all over European football and beyond who would want me. They would pay the same wage too, certainly in the Premier League. So thank you very much indeed. I'm off to play. That's what I'd be doing. I think it's very, very poor the way Arteta has handled this, clearly personally and definitely publicly. Danny, a couple of the stories I want to get your view on before we're out of time today. I want to start with Andros Townsend, who is playing for Luton Town now. Did you know this?
I did.
He started at Old Trafford in United's latest shonky crap performance, but won the game performance on Saturday.
3 points and
3
form
points.
in 5 matches.
12 points in 15. Form team. So Andros Townsend, great character, TalkSport presenter. He's going to have a good broadcasting career when he does decide to retire. Still only 32. He was on BBC Radio 5 Live's Monday Night Club, and he said this. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but I wanted to read the quote to you and get your view on it as someone who, you know, has done a few things to keep the career going through, you know, the injuries and travails that come with being a top footballer. He says, one of the best natural sources of collagen is chicken feet. It's simple. It tastes exactly like chicken wing. It's low on meat, has lots of cartilage close to the bone. It's got skin around it. It's very nice. In China, South Africa, in Portugal, it's eaten quite commonly. 20 minutes in the steam oven and get it down you. I'm also doing mouth taping. Yeah, I'm doing that. All I know is I'm 32 and I've been out of the game for 2 years and I feel absolutely amazing. I don't know what it is specifically, but I'm doing all these little 1% things. I'm also doing nutrition, recovery, hyperbaric chambers, red light therapy, flow therapy. All these things I'm doing seem to be working. If you're doing all the things, Danny, how would you know what's working? And also, have you ever eaten chicken feet or anything similar in order to improve performance?
No, I can't say that I have. I think everything else that he was doing, he probably should have ended with the chicken feet as opposed to leading with the chicken feet. I think there's probably some other decent substitutions with regards to collagen that could be available to him. I'm just saying. Get it down. Does he like chew? What about the claw?
Just like I'm a celebrity, get me out of here trying to down a kangaroo anus. Just straight in. Get it in.
The anus was loose, allegedly. Yeah. I've said this to you before. We're all psychopaths. There's how do I figure out how to say this, and what do I want to reference right here? There's so
Tell me
many
about that
different...
time you ate that anus and it improved your performance. Tell me about it. What animal's penis did you ingest to have a good game for the crew?
It was an elephant, Rennie. No,
listen, in one swallow, just one mouthful.
There's so many data points throughout the course of my career where I was doing things without the knowledge of anybody else, thinking that this could give me an event. I knew that there were people with more talent in their pinky toe than I had in my entire body. And so I had to work twice as hard. I mean, to the point where I refused to even do any of my college credits because I felt like if I wasn't focused and really thinking about watching film, all that stuff, that it was going to be gone. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I was constantly had imposter syndrome when I was inside that locker room. Even though I was confident in what I could do, I always felt like I had to prove that I belonged there. And it was throughout my entire career. But that was everything. I mean, when I was with Miami Fusion and Ray Hudson, I had an adductor / hernia that I had to have hernia surgery immediately following the season. I was taking Aleve, naproxen. They were giving me these other 2 pills. I would take 3 Aleve before training. In the morning, I would take these other pills, these 2 pills that would allegedly be the ultimate anti-inflammatory before training. I would take 4 more Aleve at lunch, take 2 more of those pills in the afternoon, and take 3 more before. And that was just for me to be able to step on the field. Now, whether we're talking about, I mean, even to this day, I'm doing turmeric, I'm doing blackberry. In the mornings, I'm doing all of the mushroom vitamins and minerals that I can possibly take. I'm taking probiotics. I'm taking these fish oil brain pills. Like, to this day, I'm still doing all these things because in my mind, I've kind of like tweaked this recipe of how I need to take care of my body, specifically my brain, because of all the concussion issues that I've had. Players will do anything. They really will. And this is where so many guys get themselves in trouble. Like even down to like when people say, "Oh, I was taking my wife's fat burning pills." It's because they're insecure about their body. It's because we're being told we're fat. It's because we're being told, like there's managers to this day that weigh their players each and every morning, that every week they'll go and they'll do the fat testing. Be like, you're 4% fat. And it fucks with your psyche. Sorry, Tim. But I'm not sorry. But like when you start to think about, like, I've got to be this machine, and I'm not necessarily this human being, but I'm a human being inside of this machine that I've got to constantly feed and feed and feed and feed and feed. So these guys, Fanders Townsend, the mouth taping, we've heard from Erling Haaland, Erling Haaland eating hearts and liver of animals and all this stuff, blue light, red light, taping your mouth for more breathing through nostril exercises, hyperbolic chambers. They've got extraordinary amounts of money, so they can do this. I would even go towards, the nutritionist and a chef and cooking your meals. And I remember when Phil Foden started doing it, and he was like 17, 18 years old. I remember the dietary stuff from Jurgen Klopp in Liverpool, where they brought that lady in from Germany and she started testing their bodies and then would cultivate, 3 options of meals that were specific for the player that would then create this ultimate physicality for them to be able to compete at the highest level. So, yeah, I'm not surprised. And players are psychopaths, and they'll do anything and everything. If they said to you right now, Tom Rennie, I'll give you the elixir of life, and you'll be able to operate at the highest level of your profession for the next 5 years if you eat this chicken feet, you eat 2 chicken feet once a day. I bet you your vegan ass will be eating chicken feet twice a day for next 5 years if you could do it. I mean, that's what it is. It's cause and effect. Hey, you can get this if you do this. If there's just 1 ounce of truth, and it won't get them suspended for doping, players will do it, man.
Did the chicken die of natural causes is my only question.
Oh, that's true. Got hit by a truck.
If it got hit by a truck or hung itself, then I will happily eat it. Otherwise, I couldn't do it. One more thing, Danny, I wanted to ask you about. I stayed up late Monday. Free on Apple TV. I watched a tremendous game of football. I enjoyed immensely. I just seen the Hammers win against Nottingham Forest, and then watched my American soccer team, Columbus Crew, who you played for, of course, beat Atlanta 4-2 in the third game of this 3-match series, which we both agreed has been terrific and really enjoyable. And I don't like aggregate, so there's been a great solution to getting rid of aggregate. Yeah. Also notable that Zande Silva, a Hammers alum, scored for Atlanta in this game as well, so it had another little bit of interest for me. But I watched the game. Crew were terrific. The caliber of the goals, Amundsen's goal and Nagbe's goal, excellent. The goal just after half-time, which kind of set up the thing, absolutely brilliant. It was the Rossi goal, I think. It was a brilliant finish to kind of end the tie, and a couple of goals after that, but that sort of saw the end of it. Through now to semi-finals of conference semis, then the conference final, then MLS Cup. It's Orlando against Columbus Crew. Cincinnati take on Philadelphia Union. In the West, it's Houston Dynamo against Kansas City. And the Sounders take on LAFC in the other semi in the West. How do you see it, Danny? I mean, the 3-game playoffs were really interesting. There aren't going to be games when the US national team are playing because these are serious times now, so not like some sort of silly league game to make the owners some money mid-season, which I always find bizarre. It's the real business end of the season now. What do you make to it all?
Well, quick little qualifier. Playing through the last 2 international windows were because of weather rescheduling and because of Leagues Cup rescheduling. So
should be banned. Is
just
what it
for clarification. Yeah, just for clarification.
And, well, they get the option to play. And if they choose to play, one of the reasons they can reschedule the games in that window is one of the considerations is we need the ticket sales. It can't be discounted.
So I'm going to put my MLS Homer hat on for a second. You're incorrect. The start of the season.
Well, I got the fucking information from you, so you obviously explained it badly, haven't you?
I'm trying to tell you. It was the start of the season. You can choose if you're going to schedule a game during the international window.
Right. Okay.
But because of weather, and we've had a bunch of weather delays, we've had a bunch of weather rescheduling, and we've had Leagues Cup because of the longevity of certain games and teams making it to the knockout rounds. That's why we had during the September and October windows, we had some games being played, some makeup games being played. But I get your anger. Excuse me, I didn't want to press my cough button for some reason. It was literally right there. And I was like, nah, I'm going to cough anyways.
No, don't do it. It's a podcast. We do what we want here.
Yeah.
Well, let's beep the cough out. People will find that very unpleasant. So we just that out. That was a cough. Sorry, Tim.
So now here's the thing. FC Cincinnati at home against Philadelphia Union. No Matt Miazga. Matt Miazga just named MLS Defender of the Year. He was shown a second yellow card for some idiotic reason and elected to try to allegedly go into the referee's locker room afterwards. We'll see what that fine looks like. Home field advantage. Always think about home field advantage. It's somewhere between 85 and 90% that home advantage teams will then go on to the next round. So Cincinnati at home against Philly. Columbus has been amazing at lower.com field. They've been horrific on the road. They go play Oscar Pareja's Orlando City. They've been very, very good at home. So that one's going to be an absolute dogfight. If you want Dunsethery, you want antagonism, you want housery, sorry, Tim, Orlando City is your team in the playoffs. Houston, remember, Houston won the U.S. Open Cup trophy. They beat Inter Miami without Lionel Messi, but still beat them. Kansas City wasn't supposed to get past St. Louis. So Houston at home against Sporting Kansas City. I call this matchup the why not us? Why not us? Nobody's picking Houston or Sporting Kansas City, so why not us? The big ones out in the West. Seattle Sounders at home on the turf against LAFC. That is going to be an extraordinary game. Brian Smetzer's side, remember Nico Ladero and Raul Ruidiaz sitting on the bench, coming off being impact players. Jordan Moore scoring goals. There's a guy named Albert Rusnak, used to play for Man City back in the day. He scored 7 goals this season, all game winners. Really, really talented player. So that's the next round, conference semifinals. We'll see how it plays out. Cincinnati at home to Philly, Columbus on the road at Orlando, Seattle at home against LAFC, Houston at home against Sporting Kansas City. And again, home field advantage. Everyone talks about promotion, relegation. What about MLS? Well, now it matters. Now your form throughout the course of the season matters, because who would have thought that LAFC would have to go to Seattle in the conference semifinals because Seattle had a better record? Goes back to decision day when I did the game with Bretos. Seattle on the road at St. Louis. They didn't have to win. They did win, and they locked up second place because of it. You're almost dying right now. You good?
I know. A quick sneeze. It's a very dusty room. I was very much enjoying the analysis. Didn't want to ruin it. I pressed my cough button, though, so listeners didn't hate it. It's going to be good. I've enjoyed it, and I'm very much enjoying Columbus Crew being good, considering that after the SiriusXM FC listeners chose them as my team, they've been ever since. So sorry, Tim. So I'm delighted to be in the semi-finals here. I'm sure it's all down to me. Looks like a tough one, but that Cucho's good player, isn't he? Good player.
Well, for Nancy.
Yeah. Good guy. Well, you picked him up. You did say start of the season. They'll be very, very different this year, and they have been very, very different this year. Though, Orlando, you picked them out, didn't you? You picked them out already previously as your potential winners. So, hey, we'll see. We'll see. Right, that's it for today's programme. Brian Dunseth, always a pleasure. I'm Tom Money. Tim Horsey produced the programme. It's been called Week in the Tackle. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, if you're listening as a podcast. The whole show is available to watch. You can see us like cough and that on YouTube. We'll see you next week. All right.